Welcome back and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. I am Kenneth Shark Kinney, your host and Chief Shark Officer. If you know anything about addressable TV, which is basically targeted television ads to specific people based on their interests, habits, etc., rather than just straight linear ads, then you also know that there are a lot of changes in the industry. But with that state of continuous change and evolution, what is needed to really move the industry forward with so many more changes that need to come? Should you watch ads that are targeted to you? I hope so. They just bring more value to the advertiser, the agency, the publisher, and, well, you, the viewer. Larry Allen is the Vice President and General Manager of Addressable TV Enablement for Comcast Advertising, and he is responsible for guiding the addressable TV solutions across Comcast, leveraging data and technology to enhance the consumer experience while delivering optimal results for clients across all screens. And on this episode, we'll discuss the state of addressable TV, measurement, walled gardens, scalability, time to launch a campaign, data privacy, TV during a pandemic, bacon and goat cheese Brussels sprouts, 4 rings and a better legacy, river sharks, and a lot more. And you're also going to hear about another new awesome sponsor of the show who I'm really excited to work with, have worked with for years, and again, helping this shark swim just a little bit faster. So let's tune in to an addressable VP with a shark that obviously deserves his own TV channel on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Well, Larry, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would tell us a little bit about your background, your career to date, and the journey that got you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. So currently I'm the VP and General Manager of Addressable Enablement at Comcast Advertising. So leading a lot of those efforts around how do we stand up Addressable for our national programming partners. My career has been, really fun. Ad tech and online advertising since the late 90s. Started at one of the first ad serving companies and ran an ad network early in the days. Rolled that into rich media and some analytics businesses, lots of startups for the first 10 years of my career, and then moved to the agency side of the business. I was at Xaxis when we launched the programmatic trading desk for Group M. So that was a lot of fun. And, made my way to a big media company at Warner Media, Turner at the time, and spent some time there running product strategy and, really thinking about the addressable space, which got me here. I started as a client of Comcast and then ended up being fortunate enough to take this job and help move the industry forward.
As we just said, that industry or the people that we know, it is a small world. To help move this forward, kind of level set where you think the state of addressable TV is today in 2021. We're coming out of a pandemic, and obviously we've seen a lot of consumption habits change, but all things being considered, being able to target people has only gotten better, not worse, but that also presents some challenges. So where do you see sort of the state of the market? Because it's one that is constantly in flux.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think addressable has been pretty stable for 4 or 5 years, and people are probably shocked to hear me say that. But in the kind of local TV space, the 2 minutes of time that the distributors get in order to sell inventory within their footprints, they've made those minutes addressable for a very long time, and I think that has hit kind of maturity. And what's interesting is now the agencies and buying community in general, they really want to ladder that up and scale to the 14 minutes of time that the national programmers run, and combine that with the connected TV inventory, which is arguably also addressable. And so we're at this inflection point where a lot of buyers have been buying addressable TV, yourself included. You're quite experienced at it. And so I think we're at that moment where it's time for scale. And so if it was a baseball analogy, probably second, third inning, where, we're basically now laying the foundation for other partners beyond our own inventory to basically take advantage of this amazing capability and drive effectiveness and value for marketers.
Yeah, I've sat on several panels where I was considered a pioneer in addressable TV, which was a little disconcerting because it made me feel like I was going to be in a black and white photo somewhere, with it, make it look old with that sort of sepia feel. But when you think of that 14 minutes that we're trying to get to, how do we bridge and start really advancing that 2 to 14 minutes? Because that's funny you say that, because I've been thinking about this 2 minutes question every time I speak about addressable TV for a long time. We are in a very mature phase, but what's going to start bridging that gap? Is it simply the pressure from advertisers who are clamoring for more inventory?
I mean, I think that will help. In the upfront negotiations, if they say, as part of our deal, I want
Yeah.
10% of my spend to run addressably, that would apply some pressure and people would move pretty quickly. That's the wonderful thing about that cycle, is it actually can be a catalyst for change.
But that really does require a lot of the larger agencies who are in those upfronts to demand that, because most of the advertisers don't have that kind of purchasing power,
Yep.
unless
Yeah.
you're major automotive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, an automotive is a big buyer of addressable today. So,
Mhm.
if they came to the table and said, "Hey, we want this to be a significant portion of our," then I think the market would move pretty quickly. I think the other part is really within the programmer. They've run TV campaign management systems for probably 20 years, and so they're very hardened. The process is hardened, the organization is hardened, and it is a well-oiled machine. I mean, being in digital, I was always like, digital inventory is the most efficient. TV is old and slow and whatever. And then I worked at a TV company, and I was like, wow, actually, these guys are efficient and have a lot of data and are really smart about how they optimize and manage yield. And man, they're proficient at their trade. So, I think that's an area where I spend a lot of time with our programming partners thinking about how do they change literally every system, start to finish, to really consider from a planning and execution standpoint, how do they take advantage of this inventory that they can now create or convert, as well as introduce their connected TV inventory into that same pool, right? So they need to combine two different types of inventory that are today managed a little bit differently, but more similar than kind of your traditional, online digital or mobile digital inventory. So I think the systems are a big area of focus that needs to be addressed and kind of enhanced for this new world. The other thing that we often talk about as a blocker is the measurement. So all TV is basically transacted on a Nielsen C3 or C7 measurement currency. That being able to consider and understand the addressable insertions and be aware of it as they are resetting their ratings is paramount, because if that is still going to be the majority of how TV's transacted for the next 2, 3, 5 years, probably, because there are plenty of clients that buying on a broad demo still makes sense. Now, we think addressable is an amazing complement to that, and can actually supercharge campaigns by reaching, the lower frequency viewers, by reaching those hard niche audiences that, don't either fit into the broad demo, people that are over 54, as an example, that still have a lot of spending power. So measurement piece is a big one, because the programmers are going to have a hard time converting, a significant portion of those 14 minutes to addressable until the measurement can actually suss out which pieces of the inventory were addressable and which pieces were delivered on a traditional demo.
So now let me tell you about a new sponsor for the show, making again a big splash. Again, your favorite shark would only work with the best, and I've known and worked with AC and his team at Drips for years. Looking for an outbound push? Then take a look at Drips, the founders of conversational texting, where they use conversational AI to help you reach customers where they're most responsive, and that's on their phones. And working with major brands like 3-Day Blinds, Liberty Mutual, Credit Repair, and Gainsco, Drips is leading the way for some of the biggest brands in the world to improve engagement rates and outcomes for their prospects and customers. Thank you, Drips. And now, back to the show. So, one of the biggest challenges of that, though, with measurement, and this is a challenge, of course, with all digital channels as well, is really having those walled gardens. Everybody's competing for the money. This was some of the same arguments that have been going on forever. And Facebook's competing against Google. Google's competing against, Comcast's TV inventory and so on and so forth. I mean, they all are competing for those dollars, and no real expectation to necessarily ask them to play nice and share everybody's data together, because that wouldn't happen. But how does an agency, even a sophisticated one, and with the smarter brands, how do they push for better measurement? Having a client in today's world wait 30, 60, or 90 days for attribution reports post campaign that's a Jurassic mentality in a lot of ways for a lot of people. But for so many digital marketers, especially, they think that they've got to measure today what they see in Google Analytics and they go make massive changes tomorrow. And I think that's sort of the myth of how some TV's done. And I wish you'd sort of elaborate on how you think we can improve measurement.
Yeah, I kind of think about measurement in two buckets. So I think about measurement on the kind of rating side of the equation, which is really heavily focused on the planning and just validation
Great
of
point.
delivery, right?
Yeah.
So that's bucket number one. And as much as people like to beat up on Nielsen and ComScore, I think both of them have made tremendous effort and have actually moved the needle with regard to getting access to data, whether that's the underlying kind of set-top box and platform data for kind of traditional linear television, but also you think about the deals that they've done with Roku, with Facebook, even with YouTube and others, where they're able to actually measure some of that inventory now, which 5 years ago you would have asked me if that's going to happen. I would say absolutely not. Why would they let them in? But I think even those big technology platforms are recognizing that if they want to participate in kind of the traditional advertising ecosystem in a bigger way, they have to play nice there. And that validation is important. Clearly, that's not the majority of their business. I mean, for most of those platforms, it's less than 20% of their revenue, probably. But I think they want to participate, and they're recognizing that they have a place in the ecosystem, and I think they're starting to play a bit more nicer. Now, the attribution side is very different. I think we, as kind of participating in the core television ecosystem, recognize the benefit of attribution, the power of television. And so I think if you talk to any distributor or national TV programmer that's experimenting or driving towards delivering a scaled addressable product, attribution is part and parcel to that campaign delivery, because they recognize that it just puts a fine point on the power of TV, and that TV has always worked, and now it works even better. And we now have a mechanism in attribution tied to deterministic exposures that it actually did work and it delivered. And you can now kind of tease out, oh yeah, TV drove the search activity, but TV also participated in the downstream benefit. Search is probably in the not too distant future not going to get the majority of the credit for that downstream activity. So that's a big one. But on the platform side, they all have their own internal attribution tools, and they're not necessarily participating with the attribution vendors from a normalization and, hey, let's compare, how did a video ad on the Facebook news feed compare to a video ad that ran on my big screen TV in my living room? I don't know that they're going to participate there anytime soon, because they will probably not bode well.
How has the pandemic really affected, accelerated, influence, changed the way we look at TV today?
Well, I think people are watching more TV than ever before. I think they are desperate for high quality content, which is all good. That that will enable this ecosystem to thrive for, I think, many years to come. On the advertising side, clearly there was a big blip in the middle of the year because of the pandemic. You can read kind of any article about that. But the good news is, I think we're on the other side of it. I think, the market has come back. I think people have retuned their messaging. That was the biggest issue. I think a lot of advertisers that are big advertisers, auto, CPG, telecommunications, those are all categories that were highly sought after and in demand during the pandemic. And the biggest issue for them wasn't that they didn't want to keep spending because the consumer demand was up. It was actually that the messaging that they previously had in the market was tone deaf. And so they needed to change creative. That takes a quarter. I mean, producing $1 million commercial, you don't shoot that overnight, So, and when you're in a pandemic, right, getting access to talent and, support. So, that was a big part of why the money was paused in Q2. But now, Q4, I think across the board, most programmers you talk to or inventory owners would say they were up every year. Kind of moving into 21, everything looks good. Overall, general economy looks to be growing. So that all bodes well for what we're doing. I do think the pandemic gave people an opportunity to kind of hit the pause button and say, hey, do I need more flexibility in how I manage my business from an ad spend standpoint? And I think people do need or are requesting more flexibility in how they execute campaigns. We may finally move away from the save as mentality of TV, where I ran a plan. Next quarter, I save that plan as next quarter's campaign and I rerun it. Like that happened. And, we saw many advertisers that would just basically rerun the same schedule over and over and over again, with slight variations and tweaks, of course. I'm not suggesting that the agency or the brand, were lazy. It was just that it worked and why mess with a good thing? But that limited their opportunity to invest in other things that could make that campaign work better. And I think now we have that opportunity, and people are saying, hey, if I eliminate a little bit of waste over here, I could use that money to fund these new things like connected TV or addressable TV, which work really well in tandem with a national linear schedule.
So now let me tell you about a new sponsor for the show making a big splash, if you will. Your favorite shark would only work with the best, and I've worked with a great team at Invoca for several years now. From marketing to sales and commerce to CX, Invoca's active conversation intelligence platform enables revenue teams to create better buying experiences, drive more leads, and increase revenue. Trusted by top brands like Dish Network, Mayo Clinic, Mutual Omaha, Pods, and SunTrust, Greg and the Invoca team are doing some amazing work in turning conversion data into automated action to enhance digital touchpoints and human interaction. Thank you, Invoca. So now, back to the show. Are there any myths about Addressable that you can think of, that you hear, that are still sort of fallacies in the market that you want people to not think of anymore?
Well, yeah, I mean, the one that I would absolutely want to debunk is scale. I mean, people think that Addressable has no scale, and that's just not true. I mean, there are billions of impressions available on a monthly basis across the ecosystem. Now, today you have to either work with an aggregator or do the aggregation work on your own to bring that scale together. But that's exactly what we've solved for with our national programming partners. We've got a number of them now that have addressable inventory, lit up at scale. And so, they're all running campaigns and open and ready for business. So I think that's a big one that I would let people know, that you can confidently come to the table with a reasonable budget, execute it, and deliver it, which is important. Obviously, you don't want to have a budget go unfulfilled. That's never good. The other thing is also that it's hard. I think it's a lot easier today than it was 4 years ago. And that's, I think, primarily because the supporting systems like audience distribution, attribution, pacing and delivery, measurement, these things have all gotten better over the last couple years. And now I think, and people actually have experience, right? So if you call an inventory owner that has addressable capabilities, I think you can execute a campaign in 3 to 5 days at this point. Whereas
Yes. Oh,
4 years ago, it probably
it was
took
a
a
month
month.
out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So that is another area that I think is probably people just aren't aware, right? And also the education within the buying community. It started as a specialty inside the agency, and now I think partly because of the growth of streaming and people like, oh wow, this is where a lot of the viewership is moving. I think the skill set is moving broader than those specialty groups, which is great. So now it's an education process that all of us need to participate in to basically get general video buying community to understand addressable TV should be a core component of their budgets.
Yeah, but do you see the market anytime in the near future really being able to address addressable TV, buying it on that scale if you are the agency in Minneapolis, as opposed to the small clique of groups that are broader in knowledge internally that live in New York or Chicago or San Francisco or LA, for example? There are very few really smart players in this space. Although that has broadened greatly than that 4-year period, it's not necessarily at the retail level for a lot of even large companies to really dip their toe in the water if they're married to that agency that's in Des Moines, or I don't know why I'm picking on the Midwest. If you're, a St. Louis based agency, again, let me find, if you're an Atlanta based company, for example, with an agency, not a lot of those, I still find them dipping their toe inside addressable TV. Now they're doing it more from a digital standpoint, but not necessarily from a larger national scale TV campaign.
If you kind of take a step back and say, look, let's not talk about addressable, let's talk about audience buying as a a mechanism for success for brands. I think that has not permeated the industry yet, right? They're doing it maybe in niche digital opportunities, where the audiences are ready made for them and they can literally click a drop down and just buy. That's easy. That's great. However, I think in the more traditional space, whether it's audio or video / television, those shops aren't yet skilled in audience buying. They're still buying on demos or spots, right? And so I think that's the education comment I was making earlier,
Yeah.
that we need to do a better job. I can tell you from my time at Warner, we had an agency in Cincinnati that was one of our top producing agencies buying data-driven linear. They got it. They saw the opportunity. They recognized that, it was a way for them to be competitive, for them to win business, that, they would walk in and they basically said, look, we're the advanced city of the future. And they were small. They didn't have a lot of clients, but they were winning clients. They leaned in, they educated themselves, and then they executed, and they recognized that when they bought on an audience, they delivered better results for their clients. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I would encourage those smaller agencies in the markets that we don't want to pick on to basically, lean in and educate themselves. I think it would be a really good thing for their business and their clients especially, but would probably enable them to grow.
Yeah, agreed. I think of just so often, I live in the central part of the country as well. So I think if I had not necessarily worked heavily in TV, would have necessarily had the exposure that I had working with the Fortune 200 in these campaigns. A lot of people in my area or similar areas, Dallas, Houston, Phoenix, most of them don't have addressable TV knowledge. And I'm wanting to see more of that broaden.
Well, so I would add to the easy comment. Those agencies that are smaller, they don't have the resources to invest in the infrastructure or data. Like there's a number of things that kind of surround the process that if you aren't part of a big holding company, it's going to be tough. Which is why the platform businesses have done so well in audience sales with them, because guess what? They made it easy. They said, pull up to
Exactly.
my UI. I'm going to give you all of the information you need that doesn't cost you anything to build a plan, to select some data, to upload your budget and execute. And I think we're moving in that direction. I mean, if you look at what's happening with programmatic in the digital space, all the agencies are basically, trying to spend their money in programmatic first, outside of, really high end tentpole events and things where you do need like a customized interaction. I think that is inevitable, that we will see more automation come into the TV buying process. We've got in our local sales environment, we try to go into our markets and our individual customers, and basically we have a platform for them where they can pull up and buy television in an automated fashion. It's not programmatic, using a DSP, but it is a UI that you log into. You can input a budget and you're creative and spend money. So that is just going to start to permeate more and more, and make it easier for these agencies and individual buyers to execute TV campaigns more like the platform businesses. It won't be 100% of the business,
Right.
but it will be a growing percentage over the coming years.
You mentioned something earlier I wanted to touch base on. How is this affected that you see across the board, maybe with MVPDs, not necessarily Comcast, but how does CCPA and the other privacy laws now, how are you seeing an impact in this industry to where that's affected how we're targeting people, where people were leveraging so much on third-party data?
Yeah, I think as distributors are very fortunate that we have direct to consumer relationships that are valued. We're delivering a product and a service that they want to pay for on an ongoing basis. We all take privacy extremely seriously, and are delivering the ability for people to opt out or opt in based on the rule of law in whatever state or country that we're operating in. And I think the MVPDs traditionally have taken that very seriously because of oversight. And so that will continue, and that actually makes me really proud, because we are looking out for the consumer first and foremost. And there were definitely practices in kind of the Wild West of early days of digital that you kind of looked the other way a little bit. You sort of did the right thing, but if you were able to build your business, maybe you took advantage of it for a little while, and that never made me feel good, and so like that's something that I'm proud of, that we actually can take that stand and have a business that collectively is looking out for the consumer, and I would say generally puts the consumer first. I mean, our video product business, if you want to call it that, is the most important thing, and then advertising and how we make that work kind of tucks in as a very, very close second. But we always try to err on the side of the consumer first. So that's a nice thing. Look, in individual markets where the laws are more strict, we have to enforce them. And, does an entire state become not eligible? Maybe. But which would be unfortunate, because I think that's also doing a disservice to the consumer if you basically make all the advertising in a state dumb. Like, that is not good for them, because then they're going to be over frequency. They're going to be getting ads that they don't care about. And survey after survey after survey shows consumers prefer ads that are more relevant to them. Now, do they want them to be creepy and spooky and no, of course not. But generally more aligned to their sensibilities is beneficial.
Yeah. And I was just trying to think as you were talking about this, I can't think of one TV publisher or one of the big agencies or even one of the big brands who wouldn't remind me, even though I was on the side of the folks that were pulling all this data together and had more insights than all the other parties. And we were very respectful to consumer privacy, but it was refreshing to hear other people remind us to be private, because they understood the power of it. And it was very well respected despite everything that's going on in the normal data world. So
yeah. The other thing I like about it, it just makes everybody's job harder, but at the same time, it does sort of level the playing field.
Yeah.
Because then now all of a sudden you don't have these kind of unfair situations where a platform that has a closed ecosystem has all of the power, right? They have to follow the same rules. So that's actually also refreshing because it seems like it gives everybody kind of an even footing.
Yeah, good point. So, what is Comcast doing in respect to addressability? What have you guys been doing over the last several months to year, really, with respect to advancing addressable TV?
We've been leaning in. I think the best thing they did was hire me. um, no, seriously, they kicked off an initiative in 2019 where we came together with Cox and Charter to basically try to unify the footprint and the workflow, make it easier for a programmer and importantly a marketer to execute campaigns on a large footprint of addressable inventory. And we've been pushing on that initiative now. I picked up that baton and have been running really fast with it over the last year. And we've made a lot of progress. We've got multiple programmers now signed on to that service and making great headway. We're pushing with our measurement partners. I think I mentioned before, we're trying to be, much more collaborative with them because that is a key obstacle that we have to solve. And so, putting making our data available in the right way for those services to be able to measure campaigns within our footprint is critical path. And so we've invested a lot of time and energy there. And then internally, just things with the workflow, upgrading systems. To my point about programmer systems needing to be changed, our systems needed to be enhanced as well. So a lot of development work happening to streamline, the creative distribution process, the conditioning process, make sure that when a programmer says, hey, this is a spot that I want to make addressable, that we actually understand that and can do it across the entire footprint. A lot of cable companies are became as large as they are through mergers and acquisitions. And so there's a lot of tech out there that's legacy that needs to be enhanced and normalized. And so we've spent a lot of time focused on that. And we feel good that our platform's in a place now where we are ready to light up these programmers at scale and deliver value for the market.
What are the advancements you'd like to see in the mid to near long-term future?
A big one is, I think, better alignment across the ecosystem. I think we've done some good work, individually with Cox and Charter as part of this initiative, but having all of the distributors or even the smart TV guys that are doing addressable enablement, see some alignment around how programmers make that happen. There's conversations there, but it could go faster. Because that will make it easier for, again, the programmer to execute, then that gives them confidence, then they'll be able to sell the market. So, I think there's some work there that needs to happen. The other area that feels that people push back on that I don't know is as big of an issue as maybe they make it out to be, people are spoiled with digital reporting because it's near real time. You deliver an impression, you refresh your web page, and you can see, that impression added to your, impression column, right? Like it's like all of a sudden, boom, it went from 142 to 143. Wow, that's really cool. That kind of level of speed and kind of reactive review of the data, I don't know if that's necessary. But moving to a, more real-time kind of reporting and analytics capability for television, I think would be beneficial, not just for addressable, but TV in general. When I was at Warner, we were working on that. Like, how do we get a dashboard that our sales team and the support teams could have access to? Like, what's the health of the system, next day? That would be amazing, because in a lot of cases it was maybe next day, but in a lot of cases it was weekly. And so having kind of a dashboard that could give you some better intelligence about how your business is running, I think would be a big one. But again, it comes back to lots of systems, need to be upgraded. You need to be able to manage that data, and TV data is big, and people don't quite realize the volume associated with TV data and the number of systems that are involved. So, dashboards and analytics is I think a very fast follow to these foundational items to make the addressable ecosystem work better.
Larry, what do you do for fun?
Well, during pandemic times, I've been cooking a lot, which is great.
Yeah. What do you like to cook?
I've become a fan of the iron skillet. So
Nice.
Pretty much anything I can make in a skillet, I've tried. I'm very partial to my bacon and goat cheese Brussels sprouts.
Wow, that's a combination.
It's unbelievable.
Well, you're on a Shark's Perspective with a guy nicknamed Shark, and you see the sharks in the background on my Zoom call. What is your favorite kind of shark, and why? Do you have one?
Bull shark. And I would say it's because they can survive in murky water.
And in rivers.
That's right. We've had them in the Hudson River.
The Hudson River, yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
because it's brackish water all the way to Albany, actually. And so there's been bull sharks spotted, at least by where I am here near Croton.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. They can survive in varied waters. And, sometimes I think we all have to have that capability.
Brings out your inner bull shark.
In our industry.
All right. Well, let's jump to where we get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Yes.
All right. Number 1, live or VOD?
VOD.
Yeah. I don't remember the last time I watched anything other than news that was live. Number 2, you're a Steelers fan, right?
That's correct.
All right. Terry Bradshaw or Ben Roethlisberger?
Terry Bradshaw.
Why so? It's kind of hard to argue with 4 rings, but
yeah, legacy.
Yeah. All right. Number 3, the Yankees or the Mets? You're in a New Yorker now.
Yankees, just because I like to win.
Number 4 is an ad question. 6-second ad on video or a 30-second TV spot?
30-second TV spot. Hands
Why
down.
so?
Extremely effective.
Agreed.
Storytelling.
Yeah, exactly. Number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today, and you'll appreciate this, having watched probably too much Food Network like me as well over the last year. Biscuits or cornbread?
Biscuits.
Good man.
But they got to be with sausage gravy.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, Larry, where do people find out more about you, what Comcast is doing in the space, your thought leadership, and more?
Sure. Well, they can look me up on LinkedIn, of course, under Lawrence Allen, not Larry Allen, or they could check out on addressability.com. We have a huge playbook there. It talks all about addressable TV and how people can get involved.
And I'll see you at a TV conference soon. So, Larry, thank you so much for joining us today on a Shark's Perspective.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you, Shark.
So there was my conversation with Larry Allen, the Vice President and General Manager of Addressable TV Enablement for Comcast Advertising. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, love the way he addresses the state, if you will, with Addressable TV. As he said, it's time for scale. He used the analogy that we're in the 2nd or 3rd inning. And he's probably right, but I hope the industry will start driving some home runs, and soon, and in this inning. If you're familiar with addressable TV, then you likely know the capabilities and value of addressable TV advertising, but many of the limitations that existed, say, 5 years ago, still exist today. We're on the tip of the iceberg, but we need to continue to really push to take advantage of the opportunity before it passes us by. Second, what would expand the true addressable 2-minute per hour inventory? Well, if we could collectively, all together, demand more, then maybe that money would talk. Collectively, the industry needs to come together to tell them what it wants and leverage the economics to make that change. Hard to do when most companies don't work together in any kind of environment, but I sure wish we had done the same with Facebook before they went their way with advertising. It's almost an easier ask, though, with TV, because TV is a more closed ecosystem. We need more minutes. We also need to continue the level of speed, more real-time reporting and analytics, more education, more alignment. We need more of it. Third, one of the things that I found interesting is just a few years ago, all addressable TV advertising was basically done by just a handful of agencies. That has since expanded, but it's not at the retail level, if you will, for agencies in Dallas or Salt Lake or Miami or anywhere else. Knowledge of the concept, yes, but operational knowledge that still exists within a smaller group of players. So as he recommends, lean in, and I hope wherever you are, you'll lean in as much as possible to this great advertising capability. It will help the audience needle move forward as the knowledge base grows. And as he reminds us, being able to buy from a platform will definitely help move this forward to execute these campaigns. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. I'm so thankful for everyone who listens, and thank you to the amazing sponsors, Invoca and Drips, that help make this possible. Today is going to be an amazing day for you, but tomorrow it'll be amazing too, and I hope you'll join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.